Hey, Dr. Samina. This is my response to the required readings of Feminist Decolonial Positionality, Bodies, Resistance, Knowing, and Lamentations, Combat Breathing, and Black Women's Creative Practice as Episteme. I I had a tough time taking notes, not not because it was complicated, but just because there was so much. It is just there's so much to me power and thought provoking um responses that kind of would I would just be left with just hmm mm-hmm, hmm. I did that throughout the week readings. um but to start specifically with the Lamentations, Combat Breathing, and Black Women's Creative Practice as Episteme, I there's lots of levels to it. Even silences to for the silences to be acknowledged as a form. How did they say that? As a form of breathing, is a response in itself, and I, like I said, I was just kind of just left with like, just kind of thought provoking, but at the same time, just mind expanding, right? So while breathing together may provide aliveness, it can also be a reminder of trauma and oppression. And then, you know, talks about how one of the poets, they breathe together as a whole, but not only just of a way to cathart, but just as a way to acknowledge the trauma, but then the building up of themselves and working together through things. Like I said, there's just I was just I was just left with So necropolitics was a new term. As the ways state power is exercised via the threat of life, manipulation of death. Um, Combat breathing, she actually goes through breathe in 1 2 3 4, breathe out 1 2 3 4, and how that grounds a person. The breathing is for a specific time in the moment of the trauma encounter. um, and just embodying these things, um, to regulate, and then lamentations in itself, to lament, like, oh, the big thing I really also took away was how they're talking about we sing at weddings, funerals, while working and while resting. Song, like storytelling, is a process that aims to connect emotion and logic and thus places knowledge into context of interpersonal relationship. This creation combats our current modes of knowing. So then I just indigenize the thought of it. What kind of songs do we use? What kind of, like the ceremonial songs? What kind of things? So eventually, and throughout the readings, I kind of always thought about like how is this gonna be indigenized, or and I don't want to like be like, I don't want to mansplain, or like kind of that idea where I should get people to read this, or get um females to read or whatever, but like to take this in the context of First Nations, Indigenous nations, I guess, because now the feminist decolonial positionality is more of a South American, like Venice, I think, Abya Yala, the work that she did. Um, so a few, and this is very similar to the first reading. Was just I was just hmm And I'll get to that thoughts, right? To enact radical listening and epistemic disobedience. Epistemic disobedience, meaning to refusing to think, know, and explain the world only through the dominant, usually Western colonial ways of knowing. So, challenging what's out there. Decolonial positionality. So, in the context of the paper, that phrase was new to me. Hierarchical logic as center to modern colonial capitalists thinking about race, gender, and sexuality by bodies positioned on the other side of the colonial difference. Junction of patriarchies is where different patriarchy systems, such as settler, colonial, patriarchy, state, religious, internalized, meet and work together. Cosmogenic hetero reality refers to worldview where heterosexual and binary gender are treated as natural, original, and built into the creation of the universe itself. Cosmogenic ideological political thought. So there was definitely a lot of a lot of a little bit more, well, not more, but just a different kind of understanding. There's one that kind of really stood out to me about denying the effects of gendered forms of violence named by feministas communitarias intrans de patriarchatos, would be a serious insult in the context of unpunished femicide by Abyala and the thousands of mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters who are still looking for their daughters. That was like poignant. Still looking for their daughters. Very, very real for ours. Territory, body, earth. One of the most important contributions to feminism coined by Maya Zinka Lorena Cabna emerges to address a violent and complex reality for Indigenous women, that the defense of earth and territory by Indigenous movements in Abyala has taken place in context of sexual, economic, psychological, symbolic, and cultural violence for Indigenous women. I cannot conceive this woman's body without a space on earth that dignifies my existence and promotes my life in plenitude. Territorial Karupa Teria implies the conscious recovery of our first territory, the body, as a political emancipatory act. So even that, right? There's even a saying, for us up here is not how are we going to defend our sisters MMIW if we're not defending Mother Earth? So kind of like now we could think about that as a emancipatory act, right? Defending Mother Earth, our territory and the body, So a lot of it was and then the last thing, everyday insurgencies defined as practices that transcend the realm of home and the domestic to build up community. The notion of social organization, these everyday insurgencies for Lozano built up territory prior to the Mestizo nation state project taking form of rituals, midwifery, organizing practices, joint labor practices, and kinship and relationships beyond consanguinity. I should have looked at that word better. But that idea taking the form of rituals, midwifery, organizing practices, joint labor, right? Like everyday insurgencies, right? Every day taking things back. Yeah, it was like I said, a lot of it was like very informative. A lot of it's very practical, very cathartic. Understanding that even something like midwifery can be an act of insurgency, and decolonial and decolonizing understanding of the body not only as a place, not only as a cultural discourse, but also as an infleshed and contextual experience located in the temporality of temporalities, the here and now, but also the bodies that preceded us. So there there was a lot, that feeling a lot of the time I was left. So I'll have to learn what that means in naming that, but it just felt so like enriched, but like so a new knowledge was expanded in doing that and engaging it that way, I guess. So anyways, that's all I got, I guess. I think a 500 word response is technically 5 minutes, so I have 1,000 words. Sorry if it's long, but anyways, that's my response. Thank you.